is this a rare, 1860s stereo view that was recorded by the Tysons or by C.J. Tyson, and just I haven't seen an original mount sold of it? It's a good question, and I do not know the answer. But this house stood near the parking garage, what is now, of course, Racehorse Alley there behind York Street. One of my favorite views is people swimming in Rock Creek. We have a Tipton sample album at the Adams County Historical Society, and basically it was half stereo cards into a book format, and they were on the table when you went into Tipton's studio, and you could page through, and he has numbers written on it, like you see 588. This one's actually, I forget what it is, 232 maybe, but he would, it told Tipton what box the negative was in. So you would say, I want one of those stereo cards, I'd like to order one of these, and he would make that. So this is his sample album. Do you notice that Rock Creek was deep enough to swim in at one time? By the way, most of these views in the 501 to 580, I have identified the location of the views based on the rocks in the photographs.
How many of those were hand tinted? Because I have that as a William Tipton that's hand tinted.
Yeah.
I don't have very many.
Well, in the one you have, of course, remember I know that one. The one you have is actually an 1867 hand tinted view. I've only seen a handful of hand tinted ones. In other words, they reproduced this, and then someone took a paintbrush and they, tinted with the oil paints the image somehow. And believe me, I knew nothing about the tinting process that was done. But they did do this. It's extremely rare, and I think they were done as some of the first ones that were reproduced. So it's early on. And I think on the back of that one, it's so early, it doesn't have the sticker. It has writing on the back of it, and which is really, I would say, I'll put that in a rare category. So it's good. So the rocks in the photograph, and I remember I looked for this for years. You see in the back there, I called that the whale rock. And I would go around looking for that rock. And finally I found it in the background, and that's how I determined where that view was recorded. Here is 504 on Rock Creek. I can tell you one thing that we learned about the photographer's route from the photographs. It's obvious that the day they recorded views along Rock Creek, from where the views are recorded, that they drove their photographic wagon out Middle Street, and they went past the Culp Farm and down the Culp Lane into Rock Creek and recorded views there. And then they head across a farm lane up onto the top of Culp Hill. This series must have taken a week or so to record, and they probably just did it a few hours a day. They probably didn't, they probably didn't go out and record all these views at the same time. But again, we know absolutely nothing about the time frame they did this in, except it was the summer of 1867. Here is, a lot of people have complained about these views because they say, and I think this is some of the park's attitude towards not really paying attention to these views. Oh, good. Trees. Oh, wow, look, a rock. And of course, they're missing the point. In 3D, trees look really cool. And of course, these aren't any trees. These are shot up trees in front of the breastworks on Culp Hill. And for a good stereo effect, you need a foreground. The camera's really low, preferably like looking through some blades of grass. and you need a middle ground and a background. And so these images a lot of times are nature studies. And if you look at just a static print like I'm showing you, it's not as visually stunning as it is in 3D.
Jim, where's that one at?
That's right in front of the 78th New York Monument on Culp. So 178, 102nd. This is one of my personal favorites, and I'm sure if people have been with me on the Culp's Hill tour, I've taken many people to this rock. And many times I'll go to the rock with my original stereo card and my viewer in tow and make people look at it while we're standing there in front of the rock. One of my favorite rocks. So, look, it says Rock Creek. And of course, what does Rock Creek have in it? Yes. Of course, Tyson was obsessed with the fortifications along Culp's Hill. And, you know, he figured, I guess, that they wouldn't be around forever. And not only is there a cool stereo effect in these views with the rocks, but also you can see some of the entrenchments built by the Union Army on Culp's Hill when they still exist, before they're just a mound of dirt. 542. Now, here's an example. This is a Tyson image. But later, William Tipton took, and we have some of his 1890s views, so I've seen how they put a sort of piece of tape on the back of the negative with a negative number and description of the view right on the photograph. And so he uses the Tyson Brothers number 542, Southern Approach to Devil's Den. And of course, you know, you can take these out and line these up, but really cool Devil's Den view. Most of the series is rocks, Devil's Den, and rocks on Culp's Hill, and rocks in Rock Creek. And this is the one I have the stereo card up here tonight from, and it says it is, of course, this one with the the Tipton label on it, large, boulder, -- Devil's Den. But the original caption is Table Rock, boulder of Devil's Den. And of course, Table Rock, there was a rock near Niagara Falls that people ate lunch on or dinner, and they called it the Table Rock. And like in the 1820s, the rock snapped off and went down the falls, and people no longer used it. But the term Table Rock refers to a big flat rock that people have picnics on. So can you imagine people going up and eating on the Table Rock? So people ask me why we call that the Table Rock. Because it's in an 1867 caption by C.J. Tyson on one of the stereo cards. Also, there's this plant that appears in many of the Devil's Den views, common mullet. And if you go on the battlefield and you take photographs of weeds,
That stuff is everywhere.
but you know, that stuff is everywhere during just a few short weeks in bloom in the summer. I think maybe late June, early mid-July. And then it kind of dies and it stands there dead for a few weeks. So this is in June or July, if that's any case.
Very useful plant, by the way.
Is it? It's useful for hiding photo locations. So he did take some really nice, like say here's 511, the McClellan House. And I'm thinking this might be a replacement now that I'm thinking about it. I guess I have to look at my book. Let me come back to that thought. Here's John Burns' house again in 1867. And if you read my John Burns book, which, looking around, I'm assuming everyone has read it. In the chapter after the war, I explained how there was a fire in the chimney at John Burns' house in 1865. And you can see his back chimneys burned down in this view. I'm sure everybody remembers that. Now this one I take great pleasure in. Of the series of C.J. Tyson views, and we're talking again like 80 different numbers, only one view from C.J. Tyson appears in Miller's Photographic History of the Civil War. The 10-volume set produced in, what was it, 1911? And that's this view. Effects of Union shot and shell on Culp's Hill. And it's a tree that has fallen or been down because of the fire on Culp's Hill, and it's laying across a rock. Looking at the image, not in stereo, it's very difficult to see the depth of these rocks. But in, I think it was 1992, I'm thinking 1992, maybe 1991, I found the location of this view. So I'm sure, because I like to toot my own horn, you know, I have found the location of more of the C.J. Tyson views than any other person. But, has anyone else been looking for them? It's my own little hobby I created. Everybody else wants to find Civil War views. I like the 1867 ones. So here is one of the views at Devil's Den. And here is one of the Tyson